She's just a girl and she's on fire, hotter than a fantasy, lonely like a highway. She's living in a Spirit of Maryland calling me audibly, boiling. She said that she would never leave, continue to torture me, telling me to come with her underneath my comforter. And she brought a gun with her, pills and some rum with her. Took me on the balcony, telling me to jump with her. Yeah, I'm in the ghost, but I ain't doing stunts with her. I ain't trying to be that, haters wanna see that, but I got him aggy, cause I win the gold like Gabby. She's just a girl and she's on fire.
June 23, 1972, President Nixon signed the Education Amendments Act into law. This included Title IX. This was the first civil rights law that took a stand against gender discrimination. Title IX states, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." Although Title IX enforces rules regarding gender discrimination in all parts of education, its main impact can be seen on women's athletics. By implementing Title IX, the U.S. government took a stand against gender stereotypes, which has greatly impacted the lives of many young athletes. In the early 1800s, stereotypic gender roles were set in stone by society. It was expected that both men and women fulfill their duty. This required men to be the strong, dominant, and athletic sex, while females took the quiet, obedient, and nurturing role. Inevitably, this meant that women participated in little to no athletics. These stereotypes are demonstrated exceptionally well in vocational schools at the time, where the courses offered for women included home ec, cooking, and sewing, while most boys could only take shop, woodwork, and metalwork. Schools would even deny women training in the fields that society considered inappropriate. Primary physical activities available to girls were limited only to cheerleading and square dancing. Only 1 in 27 girls participated in high school sports, which meant that there were practically no college scholarships available to female athletes. All this unjust behavior stemmed from the common belief that women were too weak to participate in such competitive activity. Another false precept that contributed to the degradation of women was that menstruation weakened girls, and therefore their fragile bodies competing in harsh sports was not only wrong, but even hazardous. Finally, in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, women began taking a stand by forming informal athletic clubs. The most popular sports for women to participate in were tennis, croquet, bowling, and archery. These clubs were especially popular in the areas in and surrounding New York to New Orleans. These clubs grew in popularity, leading to parallel clubs starting to appear in colleges. Among the individuals forming these clubs was Yale freshman Lori Mifflin. Lori had been playing field hockey for 3 years at Yale with her own equipment and no uniforms when she had asked for coverage at the Yale Daily News. However, she was refused because no one agreed to cover girls' sports. Clubs and teams such as these tend to go unnoticed by historians because the teams were all intramural rather than extramural. This meant that the competitions were within a college rather than between colleges. By 1936, 70% of surveyed colleges said the primary form of women participating in sports extended only to special play days, which were scheduled days in which females had the opportunity to compete in competitions and activities against teams and students from their own school. By this point, female college athletes received only 2% of the overall athletic budget. This means, while women only got 1 day, male athletes received the remaining 98% of the school athletic budget and were traveling all over the country showcasing their talents daily each season. Each of these factors made it extremely difficult for women to take a stand against gender inequality. It was obvious that something had to be done, but at the time when equality was largely discussed regarding race, no one was willing to listen to gender issues. It wasn't until the late 1960s and early 1970s that the women's civil rights movement started receiving attention. Edith Green, the second Oregonian woman to be elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, took a stand by introducing a higher education bill that involved sections regarding sex discrimination. In addition to this, Green held the first hearings ever devoted to this topic, which are regarded as the first legislative step towards the enactment of Title IX. By 1971, just 1 year before Title IX would become official, numerous different educational bills, including gender bias, were introduced in the House of Representatives. From the number of bills written came 5 proposals and lots of debate about how to take a stand against gender inequality in regards to education. Finally, after several months and over 250 differences carefully worked out between bills, a final copy was written and presented. It then went on to be accepted by the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, as well as President Richard Nixon himself. Although this was a huge triumph for women everywhere, the fight was not over yet. The provision of Title IX came with an astonishing amount of backlash from people everywhere. Organizations such as the National Colgate Athletic Association, also known as the NCAA, and high school administrations voiced their complaints that boys' sports would suffer if girls' sports had to be funded equally. A prime example of this was Providence College in the late 1980s.
When I was in college, at Providence College, they were trying to make the sports team specifically equal to men and women. And the argument that we heard was that they really couldn't afford, it was more expensive between money and fields just to add 3 or 4 female sports, that they would actually cut 3 or 4 male sporting teams, and I believe it was baseball, football, tennis, and golf, if I remember. It was quite a few years ago. And that's how they made the teams equal. But there's a lot of backlash. A lot of the female athletes were protesting because baseball happened to be the oldest sport at Providence, and they cut it.
Schools who did not want to cut men's teams started finding ways around the law. The first lawsuit came about in 1984 when the Grove City School challenged Title IX head-on in the Grove City v. Bell case. In this incident, the Grove City School found a loophole. If they refused federal financial funding, that meant they did not have to act in compliance with Title IX. As a result, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Title IX did not cover all educational institutions, only those programs directly receiving federal funds. Other programs, such as athletics, that did not receive federal funds, were free to discriminate on the basis of gender. Schools exploited and used this defect to their advantage. However, Title IX advocates would not back down. They continued to stand up to the discrimination, and in 1988, just 4 years later, with enough backing, John Bramus pushed through and got the Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1988 passed by Congress. This act nullified the effects of the Grove City ruling by outlawing sex discrimination throughout an entire educational institution if any part of the institution received federal funding. In addition to the act, the Office for Civil Rights publicly renewed its stand against gender discrimination by naming Title IX a top priority and by publishing a Title IX Athletic Investigators Manual, which further strengthened its enforcement procedures. Finally, with a serious revised law to back them up, women all across the country were taking a stand, filing lawsuits based on gender discrimination, and they were winning. Haffer v. Temple University U.S. District Court case was among these lawsuits. In 1988, the sex discrimination taking place in Temple University's athletic program was legally challenged. The university ultimately lost when the case was settled with an agreement requiring women's athletic budget to be in proportion to the percentage of athletes that are women. This case, and many like these, all galvanized by Title IX, took a stand to make sure an end was put to gender inequality in sports. Since Title IX was passed 45 years ago, it has been subjected to over 20 proposed amendments, reviews, Supreme Court cases, and other political actions, and has changed countless lives. Title IX is now enforced all throughout the country and extends its protection to about 51.7 million elementary and secondary school students, about 14.4 million college and university students, almost 15,000 school districts, more than 3,600 colleges and universities, more than 5,000 preparatory schools, and thousands of libraries, museums, vocational rehabilitation agencies, and correctional facilities. In addition, high school women athletes has increased from 295,000 in 1972 to more than 2.6 million. In colleges, this number has increased from 30,000 to over 150,000. Title IX also is credited for sending many young athletes to college who before would have let financial deficiencies stand in the way, but now have the means to earn athletic scholarships. The road to implementing Title IX was a long one, filled with many setbacks. However, in the face of adversity, Title IX took a stand against gender discrimination, and in doing so, gave deserving young women everywhere a chance to play equal to men.